G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 14th of October 2025. Close to halfway through the month. The current state of the war sits with approximately 800,000 combatants on the Ukrainian side. This includes approximately 50,000 mercenaries and around 600,000 on the Russian side, which may also include 50,000 mercenaries. I say may because the number of mercenaries on the Russian side is not known. It's only estimated, which is only slightly better than the fact that a lot of things on the Ukrainian side are not widely reported, and numbers have fluctuated on the number of mercenaries before. It's estimated mercenaries, they often came from the same countries, often recruited through third parties in Sudan or Syria, Colombia. Apparently, Cuba has arrested some people fighting for Ukraine, but they didn't clarify whether or not some were also, if anybody was fighting for Russia, but they said they have no official participation, unlike North Korea. I don't think North Koreans were officially part of the conflict at first. They were being used as border guards, but again, Russia is a large border, and they, I do believe the pressure was on the North Korean side to participate, to get experience, and that Putin was actually resisting this. And for a long time, he did, though Zelensky kept going, you win it. All this false reporting. Why does anybody believe anything Zelensky says? The moment he speaks, you should pick up your phone and go, oh, so he's amazing. He's lying. What a shock. Yeah, Putin's not going to tell you if North Koreans are involved. North Koreans aren't going to tell you if they're involved. It's none of our business if they're involved. Which they are. So is China. Now, there's some trouble in China. Now, China is blaming Russia for... China is blaming the conflict for a fuel shortage. The number of trucks leaving Russia for China have greatly diminished. Now, there's no way China, the second largest consumer of fuel in the world, overnight suddenly lost 18% of their production. Nobody knows what happened in China. Zelensky is taking credit for destroying 80% of Russian fuel production. Was China lying about its fuel production? I think so. I think the situation is going to get very bloody very quickly. I think Zelensky is provoking Russia deliberately, and Zelensky is fucking around to find out. He is banking on Europe and air defences, keeping his miserable, greedy, gutless, warmongering hide alive. He's not a hero, folks. You may think he's a hero, but he's not a hero. He's gutless. He ran on a promise of fixing corruption. He did it. He ran on a promise of making peace with Russia. He did it. Ukraine still is in denial about its Nazi problem, and so is most of Europe, so is most of America. Politics is a complex issue. There is no such thing as just the left and just the right. Okay? There's a lot of assholes out there who just want to see the world burn. They hate all political parties, and they spend all day spewing hate. Social media has generated a rather toxic culture, and it's fermenting. And Ukraine is one of those fermenting toxic cultures. But within that culture of Ukraine is millions who won't go back to that shithole country. So Zelensky is not a hero when the majority of his own people don't want to go back. When millions don't want to fight his war. Well, we think it's around 2.5 million. We think most of them are in Canada now, though that is unconfirmed because most Ukrainian refugees, let's say, are spread out over most of Europe, and no true numbers are known. Like Poland was reporting 100,000. It turns out that was 1 million. And I think that's the same. You'll find out it's the same in the UK. You'll find that there's probably another 1 million amongst 10 countries. But they won't report that the largest number of Ukrainian refugees have gone to Russia. Because, folks, they don't want you adding 1 + 1 and going, Zelensky was engaged in ethnic cleansing. Europe doesn't want to admit that all these Ukrainians who fled the conflict, why they didn't need to leave Ukraine until 2022. Most left before then. That there was a conflict before then. They don't want to admit it. They want to cover the Donbass war up. They don't want you digging into it and finding lots of redactions, lots of holes, lots of YouTube channels out there, some of whom have gone into obscurity, others gone on to new prominence in other fields of politics, but most have stopped covering this war. There's still a few, but most of them in their past have said, although, and this is only paraphrasing, that Ukraine was engaged in a genocide and that Europe has and continues to cover it up. And that's why a lot of the moderates are very angry at Trump right now. But see, the number of people who seem to be believers in this conflict, they're on the left, folks. Do you really try? There's an old saying, never ask the fish how to fish. Okay? It's like asking a woman what she wants. Just be yourself. And if she doesn't want that, then she's not for you. Learn to grow up and realize the only person who should do your thinking is you, not the media. Oh, starting to grow a... yeah. Sorry, I've had to do a number of takes. I actually crashed a few times. But anyhow, before I continue, I'm your host, David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Ellsbound, and Erotic Tales from the Empire. I got into war in research for my next book. Actually, it's caused a delay of more than once, delays of my book, as I tried to get Kickstarters and other projects off the ground, and tried to build a YouTube channel and a merch shop, because I need an income. All my links are in the link tree. primarily, of course, I do want to be an author, and I do want to write. I don't want to write a book about the Ukraine war. I think I'm merely studying war, and I've studied war before. Okay, my grandma told me how horrific it was in occupied Germany, and you can understand why people do not look fondly back on anything from that period, even those who were basically on the other side. I've met people who fought in the Vietnam War on both sides. I've met people who fought in the Korean Wars. I've met people of dubious nature at university who definitely have blood on their hands. You start to smell it. You've actually been around soldiers. You might actually know the smell of war. And you know people who've come from conflict zones. The hardness cannot be faked. The paranoia and distrust that war breeds cannot be faked. It's a sad state of human affairs. But see, the problem is, so many people are shallow. They want attention. They want to push their politics. So they latch on to whatever is befitting the communist oppressor narratives. Anything to undermine the West. And you may think, well, it's pro-Ukrainian. If Ukraine joins Europe, isn't that helping Europe? Yeah, but Europe is the USSR. And Russia is the loose confederation of states, former communist states. Who are the communists going to support? The authoritarian superstate? Or the former communist state? And what's the biggest sin in communism? Just like the biggest sin in Islam, not being one. But even worse is leaving. They're despicable people. Unfortunately, politics blinds people. Power, ambition, greed, envy, wrath. Most of the people on the left have some form of inability to forgive or forget. And often, their trauma is self-induced. They read a history book and believe that everything to do with capitalism is destructive or vile or evil. And here's the thing, folks. In order to... let's say you have 10 acres and that produces enough food for you. How are you going to get furniture you need to produce? So you need 20 acres now so that you can produce in excess and give to others. Ta-da! You're now a capitalist. Some people are always going to... You notice the left are never equal. They never equally watch channels. They never equally distribute their purchasing power. They always favour that which benefits them the most. Congratulations. You're a capitalist. In fact, you're the worst of the capitalists because you engage in nepotism, which is the root of all corruption in capitalism. It's nepotism. You engage in selective government contracts to benefit the left so that you don't have to... You introduce artificial protections for your jobs so you can't lose them. You take government jobs and overpay yourself. The average government worker in the US is $81,000 in many states, but in Washington it's $126,000. And there are many jobs, some which go up to $200,000, $300,000. Yet the average wage is allegedly $71,000. So government workers can earn more than the average wage in the private sector. That's parasite. Take more than you give. That's capitalism. The accumulation of assets. What's wrong with that? Because they're selfish. They're lazy. They want a free ride. They think their poetry gives them a right to a living. There are thousands of poets out there. Who gets to decide? Obviously, when the left decide, they engage in nepotism. They believe in the elite. Everything they accuse you of. Everything. Every accusation by the left is a confession. And once you unravel their mindset, know where it comes from, what their goals are, and keep in mind, never let a fish tell you how to fish. Never let your enemies dictate your policy. Always think for yourself. Always research. And you will unravel the mind prison of indoctrination. See, indoctrination involves the constant repetition and the lack of critical thinking. It requires two things. One, for you to be bombarded with constant repetition. The left do this by constantly smearing Donald Trump or whoever's in power. There hasn't been a Republican yet in power that they haven't smeared. Remember, they smeared Liz Cheney until she joined the January 6th committee. She was just like they smear many Republicans over and over again unless they give in to them. So you need it's not just constant repetition where they constantly tell you for 30 years that the planet only has 12 years left. If you can't do the maths, that's up to you. I ain't doing it for you. But you should figure out that, that doom deadline has constantly just shifted, right? That it's never coming. Ta-da! Sorry, I did do the maths for you. Greta Doom Goblin. It's just in a long line of doom goblins. I should have trademarked that when I came up with Doom Goblin. So you have a focus, the Ukraine war. The left are using it to bleed both Russia and Europe. The winner will be Xi Jinping, who is destroying his own economy on purpose. He's making sure that there's nobody rich enough, powerful enough, popular enough. Anybody who's rich, anybody who's popular. Look at what happened to the actor. He got popular, they broke him, killed him. Wolf Warrior got popular. They mocked and ridiculed him online until he gave up. You're not allowed to be popular. You're not allowed to be rich. Xi Jinping, greed, envy, wrath. These are the worst in humanity. They are rabid dogs. I know it's hard to outlaw. You can legislate morality. You can outlaw greed. You can outlaw envy. You can outlaw wrath. Doesn't mean people won't stop doing it, but you got to stop. You got to stop tolerating the lies. Without lies, the left can't survive. Without people, if people have stopped fact checking. That's the ludicrous part. They watch a video and assume it must be true. Which is why channels like mine are not popular yet. Because so many people just don't think. They don't share. They don't want me to succeed. They just have their little jolly entertainment and that's it. Most people do not understand politics, so they don't care what happens. They think, somebody else would do it. I like it, Dave, but your voice is not good. Or I don't like your impressions, mate. Don't like your politics. It's not about me. It's about you. I'm just a medium of information. And if you don't share the information, you are the ones keeping the masses ignorant. You are the oppressor. You don't want to see an end to this war because it's your entertainment now. And I've seen this on so many channels now that they are merely entertainment providers. Now, we again do not have context for this building, but the twisted car parts, the sheer volume of rubble, and the would indicate that this is an older building. The fact that they don't show you what was destroyed definitely indicates that this was a industrial area. And Donald Trump has a meeting coming up this Friday with Vladimir. The topics will be air defenses and long-range capabilities. Trump is considering providing Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. Now, apparently, it is only a handful. Now, Kharkiv was hit by guided aerial bombs, knocking out power. Ukraine says hospital. If it was a hospital, they'd show you, wouldn't they? Anyway, Russia has said that they've destroyed 40 drones. But don't have any air defense claims by Zelensky, which is unusual. Normally he's crowing. But of course, most days we know he's lying. This is provable. But they do say Russia launched 96 and only managed to shoot down 69. Remember, most of them are decoys or fixed-wing surveillance drones. But they don't show you what was hit most of the time, but there are explosions. Kharkiv was hit. Pavlograd was hit. Sumy was hit. The Russians... you think by now there's nothing left in Sumy to hit, but apparently there is. Okay, most of the Ukrainian drones were aimed at Crimea because, they're not interested in ending the war. They're interested in trying to destroy the Russian economy so the Europeans could salvage theirs by replacing the... Remember, the Russian economy was growing, making inroads into Europe. You had Russian billionaires buying up parts of Europe and expanding. And then all of a sudden there was a war. What a coincidence, right? Europe, every time they lose, they go to war. This is the left, okay? It's got nothing to do with being white. It's got everything to do with the left. Yes, and you're going to say, oh, but why the left? What about the left? Look, the Middle East Middle East and Africa, unlike Europe, Middle East and Africa doesn't engage often in large-scale wars. They have lots of small wars, though, most of which go unreported. Look it up. Look at all the wars in Africa. Most of them, though, Trump has been curb-stomping. All right, so we have a bit of growth here north of Kupiansk. We have no growth in... Oh, sorry, it's updated. We have growth today in Kupiansk. The map is updated. The Russians have taken the center of Kupiansk and are now... Folks, in the last hour, the Russians have advanced in Kupiansk. They've taken most of the city now. Now, this canal, I believe, marks the edge of Kupiansk and Valery, that the Ukrainians have retreated across the bridge. They are holding the junction, mostly with artillery and small arms. They're waiting on reinforcements from the south and to counterattack. So there's major development. Kupiansk has been overrun by the Russians. Whether or not they hold it, we'll find out tomorrow. But the Russians have also overrun the Ukrainians here. Now they've had just a bit of combat around north of Lyman. The Russians had some advances here, not much. They've had a advance past the Ukraine. They are definitely headed to Lyman. Apparently, I've looked on the map. Lyman is this green area. This is, believe it or not, Savensky is up here. This is various properties under the name of what is it again? Kramen something. So yeah, it's sort of Zakrin, but it's Zakrin Kamiorski or something. It's depends on where you look, what maps. A lot of the maps of Ukraine, but the Russians have made made more progress. And also, this has expanded as well. The map updated on me must have been about an hour ago now, when the map, this dark area wasn't as far. Alright, so we go through here, we can see that there's only some fighting. The Russians have not taken Seversk. Now, that keeps a lot of road open, although advancing here on Lyman should put a lot of this under fire control and eventually cut that road. Although Ukrainians will try to speed through the wreckage. Little bits here and there, not much of combat action. Looks like stabilization of the front as Russia's prepares for a long siege of Konsk. There's a lot of troops in Konsk and the surrounding area, by the way. Now, Russia's made some advances here. They've made some advances here. As you can see, they're closer to Mironad. They've made advances here, taking the village here. This is all part of this. It's probably they haven't clicked the right place or something or know exactly where the Russians are right now. Having advanced, only slightly advanced here in the south. They've advanced. This was allegedly taken, but looks like Ukrainians have pushed them back. So not everything has gone the Russians' way. There's been some advance up the road here and around Ukraine, but nothing here. There's been advances here. Here. A little bit here and here. And I think that's about it. Oh, sorry, and the road to, although this was yesterday, this is just a little bit further east. They took most of the road yesterday here. Well, probably a bit of a no man's land between the town and the Russians, but they've expanded a bit here. And some strikes on Nikolaev, which the Russians have crossed. They've started to move north as the ground dries. And they've attacked Kherson, mostly small arms across the river, artillery. Nothing. There's now reports of a fire in Fedorovsk 14 minutes ago. So heavy fighting has broken out within the last between 1 hour and 15 minutes ago. There's been Ukrainian drone attacks with Russia launching a night offensive. And military operations are probably going to continue for hours. As we see, we have lots of news, but apparently, according to the Russians, their gas production and general hydrocarbon productions is up. And that the Kremlin hopes the US will engage the Ukrainians to take steps towards peace. Again, this doesn't take into account the fall in Russian production, Chinese production, or why there's a fall in Chinese production, but what I suspect is that some Chinese oil companies have come under state control, and thus they are no longer reporting their production figures or exporting gas and oil, which means the gas and oil that Russia was getting from China. Yeah, it seems strange. Russia, who sells gas, also buys oil. They buy diesel oil because it seems to be easier for them to export the hydrocarbons and have it processed and sent back in the Far East and shipped back to them. Right now, of course, because of damage done to some of their refineries. But there has been no drop in Russian production, but there's been very little growth. And again, Zelensky is playing with fire and tempting the Russians to increase their strikes on his little shithole in order to make the Europeans weep and demand that more be done, comrades, to save poor little Zelensky. Even though Zelensky's the little cuck who's kicking Russia in the shins and saying, I dare you hit me, I double dare you. You know, this is the childish mentality of the left, though. You're supposed to be the big man. You're supposed to just sit there and take it while we attack you. How dare you fight back? You're a war criminal for fighting back against our aggression. And because you're the bigger person, you're the aggressor. How dare you pick on little Ukraine? Of course, secretly, the whole reason behind the destruction of Ukraine is so that they can destroy another white country and flood it with Indians and Africans in the process of rebuilding. Now, Russia continues its military operations because it's been presented with no alternatives, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. However, in other news, Washington and Moscow has talked. Kremlin has put out a statement. Now, the statement basically a press release to TASS that we welcome such intentions. This is talking about Trump's efforts to return to settle the Ukrainian conflict. Again, Dmitry Petrov. Now, there's going to be meetings, but they haven't announced any. Okay, except for one where I think it says, Friday, Friday US time, I believe there will be a meeting with Zelensky. Because sometimes Zelensky's asked for meetings before and they haven't had meetings, or been a phone call or not a face-to-face, or been a short meeting with no progress. So we'll see what happens. But Ukraine talks are a sprint. Ukraine talks are not a sprint, but a marathon, according to Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. He cautious that negotiations might be prolonged, but this should not discourage efforts. He himself has been pushing European leaders to take a less aggressive stand in Ukraine, using ceasefire agreements such as the one in Gaza as examples. The whole world watched Egypt, where President Trump was congratulated by many. Now, Orban wrote on Facebook, which is, by the way, banned by Russia because it's owned by Meta, a corporation that has been declared extremist by the Russian government. Right. Now, of course, Hungary has repeatedly called on EU to grow up, but they haven't. Abandon their strategy of military operations, which they haven't. And pursue peace, which they haven't. And they always circle back to Zelensky and his, but we must be in a position of strength before we can negotiate. Now, this is not an official notice. This is a think tank in London who has said the US may provide Ukraine with 20 to 50 Tomahawks. This will not bring about strategic change. No, this is about destroying the Russian economy. They're going to target oil facilities and drive up the world price so that Ukraine can then release its strategic reserves for a huge profit. That's, of course, if they have any left after Putin has finished setting Ukraine on fire. But my guess is a lot of it is in underground tanks and out of reach, and thus out of reach, because Russian ground penetration is not as good as US ground penetration, as seen by the attack on the Kiev bunker. Russia has limited bunker busting capabilities and mostly relies on kinetic impact, much like the British Tallboy, which I think, again, the British have not made a new or any significant bunker buster as well in the last 50 years. The only huge ground penetrator right now is the US, which, pardon me, was used in Iran. However, there's been a significant escalation just by merely announcing, and this has, of course, rattled Russia's cages, which is the intended effect. But the man who looks like... This is how Zelensky looks when you're not looking. This is how Zelensky looks at you when he thinks you're not looking. He thinks his shit don't stink, and that you are nothing but a mere peasant. Your life is meaningless. You go out and fight for me, Zelensky. But the reason why he is so sour is that again, while in Copenhagen, it was announced that there were several challenges to his leadership. However, none came to publicly to challenge him. And so, despite the setbacks in his popularity, as you can see by his scowl, that he is a deeply troubled and I don't care what excuses you make for him, but he is deeply troubled, okay? If you cannot recognize a person who is unhinged, then so be it. But his former friend, Kirill Bernov, who was recently his best friend, is one of the challengers, along with former Chief Commander Valery Nazhizhny. New poll has suggested that these are the leading contenders, that the Ukrainian opposition in Spain, in exile, probably won't be able to participate in the election, whereas these party members, and Zelensky now has to either purge them, although he tried before and that didn't work, because how's he going to purge the military when the head of the military and the military intelligence are no longer under his control? They only merely exist, and they keep him in office, and he just gets to play beggar and commander-in-chief, while in reality they run the show. That Zelensky is now a figurehead reduced to monkey with cup. And as the organ grinds, he has to dance. So that smell that he smells, that's his own pants. By the way, this is what happened in 1944. The little mustache man dared Himmler to his face, and Himmler struck him down in front of General Staff, allegedly, and since then, the little mustache man had no power, and that is what kicked off the greatest war crime. That's a poor term. The worst of the worst war crimes. Because believe it or not, the little mustache man did not order the war crimes. That was Himmler. It was the SS. And that the army was caught off guard. They appealed to higher powers, all of whom looked at their shoes and told them that it was dangerous to speak out. And when they wanted to appeal to the Führer, but I'm just quoting history here, they were told to keep their mouth shut. There was no official document. Many tried to make excuses, but you can look it up. This is a classic soft coup, where a leader loses power because they bite off more they can chew. Perhaps I should have used a more modern analogy, something, though a lot of people won't realise, the coup in South Vietnam, which turned the war against the Americans. It was a CIA-backed coup. The war in Panama, again, CIA coup. Only when Panama returned to elections and the US actually realised the mistake and pulled out their CIA candidate and let Panama hold. The Americas had coups and interventions in Nicaragua and Panama and Colombia, and oddly enough, they failed to see the one in Venezuela and they got blindsided again in Brazil because Biden helped Lula win. And by helped, I mean an organisation who cannot be named decided that votes shall be shredded or flipped electronically. Now, in the current scenario in Ukraine, you have Zelensky, who was elected, but in a limited election. It's believed that only 70% of Ukraine were eligible to vote, and somehow he got a vast majority with a lot of people saying, no, we didn't vote. Again, make of that what you will. But he is only the 7th president or something. He's, Ukraine's unstable, but not that unstable. Now, make it a vote what you will. Okay. Zelensky for a long time denied. There were other political parties trying to organise opposition. Again, it's believed that it's a three-way split now, with basically Zelensky only having 1/3 of the total support. Now, I think this so-called respondents are actually the government. How many Ukrainian MPs still support Zelensky? And how many support... So, it's split between Zelensky, Baranov, and Zelensky. No one has a majority right now. Though it's believed that a direct race between the two would be very decisive, Baranov would come out the winner. Now, remember, nobody's officially declared. This is only think tanks, people who've been commissioned by the EU to find out what's really going on in Europe, and particularly EU. This is the actual job. Politico and all these political blogs, they're fronts for think tanks. And those think tanks, i.e. the RAND Corporation, are all fronts for the CIA. So you think Politico's independent? The Independent in Britain is British intelligence. So is the Telegraph and the Sun. Please grow up. Please understand that the Guardian is just a mouthpiece of the Labour Party. But Zelensky, he has 100% control of the media right now in Ukraine. That is, the Kiev Independent is about as independent as the DNC newsletter. Actually, the DNC newsletter probably has a bit more independence than the Kiev Independent. Now, hell froze over, by the way. Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, although Hillary Clinton was first, but Hillary gave a very magnanimous speech congratulating Trump. I thought it was AI at first, and then I saw Biden and I thought definitely AI. But no, it's been confirmed. Both of them hailed Trump for the Gaza peace deal, as I guess they saw the writing on the wall when they saw dozens of world leaders all congratulating, all smiling, and realising that Democrats' influence in the Middle East is all but gone, particularly the fact that Democrats have been carrot and sticking the Israelis for so long that even the Gazans, realised that they weren't interested. Gaza was interested in peace, by the way. It's just that there were many sticking points, and I think this is the same thing why people are saying apply the same pressure. I think this is a clear signal of Trump to put his thumb on the back and remove the protection from Zelensky from the consequences of his own actions. Because if this man is facing a huge wipeout without this Captain Sky Shield job or this EU, right? He wants a job in the EU. You could look it up. It was called, he wants to be the European Sky Shield, okay? You can look it up. He was selling T-shirts of him as Captain Ukraine, saying that he was going to be the Sky Shield of Europe, and that he was, and his estimated earnings, $348,000 a year as a so-called consultant on air defences for Europe against the Russian aggression. So he has he has every incentive to lie about the origins of the war. 2, the Europeans wanting their huge military budgets and tax increases are definitely going to use him. Nobody has a political incentive in Europe to tell the truth. There's no consequence because the left won't vote them out. But if this man faces an electoral defeat, they will panic, which is why they won't allow Zelensky or anybody to challenge him in the open. Remember, he's protected by British intelligence. They have stated so. Keir Starmer said it the other day, that he has 30 protective officers on Zelensky. When asked 30 handlers, British intelligence. Please, don't treat us like fucking muppets, okay? But that's what they do. They treat us like we're idiots. Now, if you wanted a more pretty picture of the state of the war, most of it is actually in 2 parts. One is the drone war on the northern Russian border, because Ukraine is trying to force the civilians out so they can, attacking the border guard positions in order to try and seize the northern gas field, because they steal Russian gas, okay? This is how Ukraine is funding its war. That's why they're $7 billion behind, because Russia has sealed and diverted a lot of gas. They've taken a lot of the pressure out of the gas line. So even if Ukraine opens it up and takes any out, it just it's low quality. It's inert gas. You can see where Russia's offensive positions are, and you can see how Kursk is the center of Donetsk there, and that offensive operations are ongoing, and you can see where they're currently. There's Pokvoka, or is it Pokvost? I forget, this map has the Russian names, but as you can see, where their offensive operations are, they've struck glide bombs on Kursk. Okay, this shows you they've got about, would you say 55% of Donetsk? Almost, or yeah. There's only that little bit in the corner, but yeah, I've almost got. But you can see, when I remember what I said, that the maps don't always agree, that one of the here's the Russians coming up to cut this road, this supply route from Izum into Donetsk and this area. So this shows Kupiansk has fallen, and the Russians fighting in the next town already, and starting and a spur into Petrovskia and Petrovskia. So there's operations. These are active operations as of an hour ago. Actively looking to cut the road into here. So, yeah. This is Pokrovska. Alright, and here you can see that's Onensk. there the Russians have made significant more advances. Yeah, so this is this is Zaporozhye, and here in Kherson. So two-thirds, getting close to two-thirds maybe, but now the Russians have made significant advances and at the current rate, maybe 1% a day, they will, if they keep it up. I don't think they can. I think this is going to be the bloodiest fight. I think once Kremensk falls, that this is the cauldron they're forming up here. Here's the artillery positions coming up into Kremensk. Once this falls, the cauldron will move up. Once this Lyman falls, they cut through here, cut Lyman and all this off. That's significant. They have to come through here. But as you can see, right, in the north, they're coming down, cutting off this. This is ineffective now. They have all these roads here, all this. I have to divert resources around through here, through this road, which still is in range of long-range artillery. This is a hub, so the Russians are cutting these roads off. There's still a road here, so they probably come through here, probably weave their way through to here, and this was going to be a major battle line along here to try and hold back, because once this supply line is cut, that means it's this road. It makes it easier and easier. The more major roads Ukraine has cut, the easier it is for Russians to lay drones in waiting. We showed you the video yesterday of the drones laying in waiting amongst the trees. When the Ukrainians come past in their pickups, the drone goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It's faster than most cars. If you got a diesel pickup, you're lucky to go to 60 miles an hour. And he's coming to a turn, so he's slowing down. So he basically ditches the truck, but while he stands up, cops a direct hit to the chest. And then a follow-up drone hits the supplies in the back of the pickup. Now here's some Ukrainians retreating. This is in I believe the Kharkiv sector. It shows you what's left of Kharkiv, and it's about to get even. So the building was hit, what's left, and it's hit again. Tornado S is a large rocket. It is not a small 122. Tornado. Spelled it wrong, didn't I? Tornado. There we go. Tornado S. It's a multi-rocket launcher system. Look at it. It's big. Okay, it's an entire truck. 300mm Tornado S. 122. The Tornado is 122. The Tornado S is a 300mm. Big step up. These are replacements for... they don't have many, by the way. You can see here. But, the Tornado G is 10 122s. S, satellite guidance upgraded. They can fire 120s. That's the G upgraded version of G. As you see there's the G. 290S. Yeah, 12 300 millimeters. They again using Russian satellite guidance. They have a shorter range, but they are guided artillery. And you can see, basically, there's the lighter variant. Now the lighter variant is 220. It's the there's a stopgap measure for So they're upgrading the 200s. So they're upgrading 122s to 200 and 200s to 300s by the looks of it. And here's the range of munitions, as you can see. Quite a pack, okay? Basically, it's firing a compact car half full of explosives at you. Yeah. Basically, they're flying over and dropping a Toyota Hilux on your head. You ain't surviving that. Look at that. Boom. 2-story building, totally rubbled, gutted in the middle. Those men are nowhere to be found unless you got a wet and dry vac or a scoop. Those are the current state of the war. Russia has made significant advances in the last hour. So this video is coming out late. So like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel and support me on Patreon. Buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, and in my profile. Or you can scan the QR code on the screen. And yes, if Ukraine was winning and advancing, there has not been a advance. There's been minor setbacks, which I've reported. But if Ukraine was winning, I would tell you. The truth matters. But if Ukraine starts to win, I guarantee you'll see another major missile launch. Ukraine will have another major base disappear off the map and will go back to losing very quickly because Russia knows exactly where and when to strike. They are just wearing down the Ukrainians for a, what would you call it? I think Putin actually called it a soft victory because they want to live with the Ukrainians. But if the Ukrainians make it clear they want a hard victory, Russia will show them what a hard victory looks like. And a hard victory, that's basically, remember those 300mm missiles? Basically, imagine getting hit by a Hilux truck every hour of the hour, day and night. City by city, and night. Getting hit, building after building. Russia will clear its borders completely of every Ukrainian settlement. And within 3 to 6 months, there will be a 40, 50 mile wide scorch mark, 1,000 miles from the top to bottom, all of Ukraine. One big long scorch mark where nothing can move without Russia blowing it to kingdom come. And what will Europe do? Invade? They get within 100 kilometers of a launcher and they get fired upon. There's no cover, no buildings to hide in. Russia will clean the map. These are only partial ripple effects. These could fire full salvos and destroy 32 hectares within seconds. 20 seconds. 9,000 missiles approximately, according to Janes. They have enough supplies, ammunition for 6 months of intense war, or 3 to 4 years of the war as it states, without its current production taken into consideration. Yes, America and Europe can outproduce Russia. But remember, if you try to strategically defeat Russia, they will annihilate Ukraine. They will go, and China will enter the war to prevent you from taking over Russia. So consider that, please. That the primary goal should be to end this war and to stop provoking Russia just so some political animal can point at Putin and say, see, he's not a good man. No, you provoke a good man and he slaps you, it's you getting what you deserve. But the left never see it that way. They see it as, I unmasked him. So never let the left teach you how to fish. Bye for now.